Right. So without further ado, I'll just launch straight into the presentation. My name is Valay. I have been associated with the IJR for the last 6 years from the time that it was started. And over the next half an hour or 45 minutes, including the interaction, we will look at the serious capacity related concerns, some of the gaps, some of the improvements that we have put out in the latest ranking of the IJR. But first, let me start with a story. And those who are not so well versed with English and they are in the room, I'd just like them to raise their hands. Otherwise, I'll continue with English. So what happens when a migrant worker from Jharkhand is mistakenly picked up? Of course, the mistake is realized later, is mistakenly picked up by the police related to a theft because somebody reported that it was a person of a similar build. The person is picked up by the police, is taken to the police station. There we find that there is a serious lack of paralegal volunteers or any other legal aid worker. So the person's rights are not most probably known to the person who's been picked up. The lack of CCTV cameras, or even if they're there, they're not maintained, they're not functioning well, means that we don't know what kind of treatment is given to the accused. After that, the case is progressing, and the serious issues of forensics, pendency, the lack of capacity means that most probably there would be no forensic report and the person would just be sent to judicial custody. Over there, the serious overcrowding issues, and we will illustrate all this to you, we will show you how bad the overcrowding issues are. The person is likely to not only face overcrowding, but most likely also face the risk of contracting diseases. In fact, just a couple of days ago, there was news articles from Visakhapatnam where lung diseases have been found to be a major problem in the jails. In jails, there's supposed to be prison legal aid clinics. While the numbers have gone up, they're overcrowded, they're overburdened. So even inside the jail, the access to justice of this accused is going to be very suboptimal, which means longer period of incarceration. As it is, we know that more undertrials are spending more time in jails now. Over the last decade, this has increased. The judicial backlog is something that we know very well of, and that would mean that in such a case, the case would be adjourned multiple times, more than a dozen times on average, before the person is finally likely to be released on bail. This is from the, let's say, the victim side. From the duty holder side, let's start with police. Each police investigative rank officer is overburdened with at least 2-3 dozen cases. At least, I'm saying, these are averages. Now, 2-3 dozen cases are not easy to solve if that is the workload. The number of pro bono lawyers under the legal aid system is very low, and we will show you the numbers, which also then, as I said before, reflects in the access to justice of these people. In courts, as it is, there are very few court clerks, and the ones who are there are therefore handling more than 100 weekly filings while they are facing 40% administrative vacancies. In jails, similarly, you'll see the severe jail staff shortages. Suppose a head warder is in a jail where there's 150% occupancy and just an average of 20% shortage. They're handling more than 11, more than 12 inmates. That is per head warder. Therefore, what we see is that the person will probably be released on bail only if there is a special campaign and under trial review committees, and if that person is lucky, there's a very motivated pro bono lawyer, then the person likely is going to get a hearing, because the person, remember, is from Jharkhand. Going back to that person, is probably perhaps a tribal, the lack of diversity within the judiciary is also going to affect the chances of this person just being understood. The cultural difference is so huge. So if there is a tribal judge, a Santhali interpreter may be provided, and then the cultural context, the barriers could perhaps be overcome, and this person could be given bail. This story is simply to illustrate the lot of statistics that we will show now. And sometimes statistics just tend to drown out the human side, but all our statistics is about the human experience, people who interface with the justice system. So we'll start the presentation now. Some of this I've already covered. Essentially, justice has become like a game of snakes and ladders. It's an ancient game. It's called Moksha Pattanam. In Sanskrit, it's called Shatranj ul Arfa in Arabic, and it has various names in different contexts. But the snakes we are interpreting them as serious capacity deficits, and the ladders are the sum of the reforms that exist. Having said that, now I simply want to talk about what the IJR is. So the IJR looks at the 4 pillars of the criminal justice system. We cover police, prisons, judiciary, and legal aid, on which individually we rank 25 states, and then overall we rank the state as well. In addition, we have assessment of the state human rights commissions, for which data is extremely difficult to come by. So we do RTI, and this is a process stretching more than 15 months. We have data on 23 state human rights commissions on the same themes as you see on the screen: budgets, human resources, infrastructure, workload, diversity, and time series analysis. Some of you are already familiar. We rank 25 states. We divide them into 2 clusters of population over 1 crore and above, and then 7 states with population 1 crore and less. We do not rank the AFSPA states and the union territories, but the IJR website and the IJR report, it provides data on every single state and UT. We want to start by talking about representation of the justice system, and we want to start by talking about gender. 90% of women in the police are all clustered among the constabulary. So they are either constables or head constables. Less than 1,000 of them are IPS officers. And there are only about 1,000 DYSPs in the country. This is a number that I want you to I want you to understand what this means. We are a country of 1.4 billion people, and we have just about 2,000 senior women officers in the country. When we come to the judiciary, we see a lot of improvement, particularly in the last few years, where the subordinate judiciary, there are roughly about 40% women judges. But as we go up the chain in the judiciary, the number just drops exponentially. What this means is that what is the probability of meeting a woman? It's 1 in 9 in the police and so on. Paralegal volunteers and panel lawyers, the crucial frontline responders of the free legal aid system, for which over 80% of the country is eligible. We are not saying that. Just 2 days ago, I think the Chief Justice of India also reiterated that fact. So the probability of meeting a woman is particularly low. And what this actually manifests in is the low compliance of MHA advisories on the presence of women at the first interface at police stations. There should be 3 women SIs and 10 women constables in every police station. And as you perhaps can see, that only Bihar comes closest to meeting the officer benchmark. It has 2.4 on average. These are averages. And no other state comes closest to it. Some UTs like Delhi and Chandigarh perhaps meet the benchmark or are very close to it. In constabulary, as I explained earlier, 90% of the women in police are in the constabulary. So we see a few states, about 6 of them, meeting the 10 constables per police station benchmark. But these are averages. So what is the issue? I think that clearly the issue is that we are not hiring women at a rate that is fast enough to really make a difference. So IGR has been doing this calculation for the last 4 times, including this time. So this is the 4th report. And we calculate at the current rates of recruitment, how many years will every state and UT take to get to this notional idea that this is the benchmark of 33%. It should be 50% or 45%, but we are sticking to 33% because that there seems to be a policy consensus on it. So most states will take more than a couple of dozen years. Some states like Tripura and Jharkhand will take several generations, so more than 100 years. That is the rate of the inclusion of women in police. While we may see some high-profile women officers, but the reality is that the rate of inclusion of or the rate of recruitment is just too slow to really make a difference. In the courts, we've seen, so I'll probably skip the slide, but just take a look, that here too, the numbers are not even. So the national average might be close to 40%, but there are states that are not even close to that, are below the national average. I'm sticking in this presentation only to the large states. The small states we have dealt with in the report, and in the interest of time, I will not be really talking about small states unless specific questions come up. We've looked at the diversity of gender, the presence of women. Now I want to talk about the other big concern in a country like India, which is the rural-urban divide. While most of the 18,000 odd police stations are still in the rural areas, the trend between 17 and 23 indicate that both kinds of police stations, urban and rural, they are facing much more workloads in terms of population and in terms of area. And while this is happening nationally, the number of police stations in rural areas has come down by over 700 police stations. This is the area slide, and you'll see that the national average of area covered by a police station in urban localities is about 20 square kilometers, and in rural areas it's about 330. The other representation of the various communities, the SC, ST, and OBC communities and groups. We yesterday marked Dr. Ambedkar's anniversary. So this slide is essentially showing you how many states meet their own quotas. This is not any common quota of say 33%, meet their own quotas. So the highlighted states are the ones that meet their own quotas, both in SC officers and in SC constables. There is a clear difference that you are able to meet your quotas more among the lower ranks in the police as compared to the officer ranks. So only 4 states meet, and journalists in the room and on the call know really very well where the largest populations are of each community. I mean, there will hardly be a state where all of them are not present in substantial numbers. So this is the SC. When we come to the scheduled tribes, we find that there's hardly a difference. In fact, the number of states meeting even the quota in constabulary has come down to 8, while the ones who meet officer ranks quotas has increased by 1. Do keep on noticing if there is a commonality in between the different quotas. The third quota is on the OBCs, and here you'll see substantial increase, and you can see the number of states that have been colored. So these quotas among OBCs are being met much more, both in officer ranks as well as in the constabulary. This was the police. Now coming to the representation of SCs and STs within subordinate courts, this data set became public about 3 years ago for the first time, and then again This data was accessed in March this year. And this shows that there is a really low representation, even in the district judiciary. So we have just about 5% STs and 14% SC judges. Nearly more than half of the posts reserved for STs and about 30% for SCs are vacant. The table, and all of this is in the report, or the table is showing you who has met how much of their quota. So let's take Bihar. If you want to see in IGR 3, Bihar met 68% of its SC judge quota. In IGR 4, the latest report, this increased to 74%. So still 25%, 26% posts are vacant. You look at Jharkhand. We understand that to be a tribal dominated state, or a large number of tribal groups are present. Over there, we find that, in fact, there has been a drop from 40% quota being met to now 21%, and so on. So similar, sorry, I was reading that for the SCs. For the STs, the situation is actually worse. In IGR 4, only 16% ST judge positions have been filled in Jharkhand. And you can look at every state. If you want to look at Kerala, that's also at 9 in IGR 3 and 16 in IGR 4 in ST judges. And by and large, the number of blues is much more in the OBC category for SC judges, for the district judges, I'm sorry. So lack of representation has real life implications, particularly for people from these groups, as they do remain marginalized, as report after report, committee after committee has reiterated. The next slide is a further information about the other states, so perhaps I will skip it and go to the next one, which provides certain key highlights. Well, Karnataka, since IGR 2019, which is the first time we put this ranking out, has remained the only state that meets the SC, ST, and OBC, all three, within the police. Perhaps it's not a surprise then that it is also the only state that meets the same quota, 3 quotas in the judiciary. While the other states are yet to meet all 3. They may be meeting 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3, different combinations, but no other state meets all the 3 quotas in both police and judiciary. Here too, we see that 61% of the categories are concentrated in the constabulary. When you look at the DSP level, this representation falls to 16%. And finally, in the high courts, since 2018, out of the about 700 odd judges that were appointed, only 37%, which is about 5 to 7%, were from scheduled castes or scheduled tribes. Sticking with the judiciary, and this is, and my colleagues here, Orgo and Leah and others can perhaps throw more light in the interaction, but the cases pending per judge have increased. In itself, not a bad thing, but the extent of increase is just too much. So if UP is at the high court level, if you just take the average, per high court level, about 15,000 cases are pending per judge. You can well imagine how many years you will have to wait for your case. Similarly, in other states, in small states, if you look at Himachal Pradesh, you look at Goa, coming to some exceptions. In Karnataka, the cases pending per high court judge has actually come down a little bit. Similarly, in Jharkhand, it has come down. Well, this is also linked to the way the high court vacancies are filled. So perhaps one could say that this is not the best reflection or the most accurate reflection. But let's see what is the situation in the subordinate judiciary. Here we have, let's take an average. At least 1,000 cases pending per subordinate judge. at least I'm just taking a lower benchmark. There are roughly 20,000 judges in the district judiciary for our country, and the caseload is just too immense. I mean, out of the 5 crore cases, about 4 crore are just in the district judiciary. And you therefore see that the courts have actually remained the last resort for people to go to. Again, referring to the Chief Justice, it is for very good reason that he has said that in certain states, suits are turned into criminal suits. And where does it all end up? It all ends up increasing the caseloads of the judiciary. The other trend that is really alarming is that the share of these cases pending over 5 years has actually started growing up again. 2 years ago, we found that this was improving. The share of 5 years cases pending over 5 years had come down. This has started increasing again. So it has increased in Bihar. You have to read it like this. The second value in the bracket is the latest value. So in Bihar, 56.2% cases are pending for over 5 years. In Nigeria, 2022, which was released in 23, this was about 47%. Similarly, you will see that it has increased in Uttar Pradesh, it has increased in Maharashtra, and so on and so forth. This is a further disaggregation of the case pendency by duration. So the left one is basically 0 to 5 years, and you'll see that Allahabad High Court tops the chart here. We had also seen it in the previous slides. And then your all India average of cases pending between 0 to 5 years is 50, roughly 49.3. The all India average for cases pending more than 20 years is nearly 25%. How are we going to address this backlog? Are technological solutions going to be enough? All of this we can discuss. But one big reason for this pendency, which is not talked about perhaps that much, of late there has been a lot of discussion around it, but one big reason is the forensics department. In every state, this remains perhaps the weakest link in terms of the servicing agencies that are supposed to help in the journey of a case to move it forward. And while you can look at the graph, the broad point is this, that roughly 10,000 positions have been sanctioned. This is the latest data. There are only 10,000 positions, out of which about 40 to 50%, nearly 50% are vacant. So every criminal case and a lot of civil cases, they have to rely on forensic information, forensic reports, and so on. And if they are not even fully staffed, forget about actually reviewing the sanction strength, then naturally there is a huge backlog that is lying at the forensic labs themselves. In fact, the level of awareness about the forensic infrastructure is quite poor. In our interactions, we have found that most people don't even know what is the structure, how many are sanctioned. We've just taken this for granted that there is a forensic department and the report has to come from there. We don't really dig into it. But this is one of the big reasons where cases also tend to get stuck. Of course, if you have the means, you can expedite this process. And while the data on pendency at forensic labs is not available, what is available is this Supreme Court report, an observation in a report where the Supreme Court has said that in about 1,300 custodial death cases, inquiries are pending because of the delay caused at forensic labs. And these are perhaps one of the most egregious kinds of cases. In custodial deaths, if we are not able to expedite the process at forensic labs, what would it mean for an average litigant, for an average case? You can imagine that. And as I mentioned before, less than 50% of the required workforce is actually working. And therefore, the question comes, can we see ahead and plan? So we tried to do this projection this time, where we're projecting that the caseload in just the subordinate judiciary will cross 5 crores in 2030. And while it is very simple and easy to blame the judges for it, as I illustrated, it is also other service agencies like the forensics, like the police investigative wings, and so on, that have to be talked about. A judge cannot sit there, get everything on his or her table and decide the case. The case has to be serviced, and so on. So in subordinate judiciary alone, we will have about 5 crore cases. And in the last 7 years, nationally, not in a single year has the national case clearance rate, which means that if 100 cases come every year, are you able to clear the 100? And these bars are showing you that in the last 7 years, not even once did this cross 100. So naturally, the pendency has grown, and it will continue to grow. Similarly, the bottom 4 bars are showing you the sanctioned and actual strengths of judges in 2016, 17, and 25. So there you can see that the sanctioned strength of judges grew only by about roughly 2,000 over these many years. And is that rate of reviewing, is this process enough? Is it robust enough to actually plan for the increasing caseload of the judiciary? It's not. Similarly, this is a projection for high courts. I will not detail this out, but the way to read it is the same. In high courts, we'll have about 60 lakh cases. This is a projection. There are caveats that are mentioned in the report, and you can look at it. The high court judge strength has been revised even less since 2016-17. However, when we come to the police, we see that police sanction strengths are revised more frequently and to a greater extent. While for the experts in the field, this may not be news, I think it is for us to understand as researchers, journalists, reporting on these issues, that the sanction strength of police is revised much more. It is around 20 lakh now, and it will probably be revised much more. So we are also projecting the civil police. We only look at civil police plus DAR. What would be the civil police sanction and actual 5 years later? We would be at about 20 million. 2 million, so about 20 lakh police. We are at right now 16 million, 1.6 million or so. So this is to illustrate that our police to population ratio is improving. In some states, it's improving much more. Perhaps it is seen as a way of also giving employment, especially in those states where opportunities are not in abundance. There, police jobs, especially at the lower ranks, become a way of winning people's favor as well. When we look at the last 10 years of prisons, the situation has only grown dire. And while I will not talk about each of these pie charts and the bars here, the broad point I want to make is actually on the next slide, which is that because of the delays that we have seen so far in the presentation and the increasing workloads of the judiciary, what we see, and remember the migrant worker from Jharkhand, that more under trials are spending more time in jails today. So in 2012, if nearly 80% went out within 1 year, in 2022, just about 70% could manage that. You see the last sliver in the first horizontal bar, which is 0.8, which is telling you the number of under trials who spent more than 5 years in jails without being charged, without being held guilty. Imagine you're in jail for more than 5 years without being held guilty. That share has grown from 0.8 to 2.6. This is a percentage. So we are talking about thousands of people and thousands more who are spending more time in jails. Now, the national occupancy we know is about 131% thereabouts. This national average hides a lot of state level variation. And the state level variation also hides a lot of jail level variation. So this time we have tried to show in more granular detail how many such jails are in India which have remained have had occupancy above 250% over the last 3 years. Not 1 year, over the last 3 years. There are 34 such prisons that have remained occupied with 250%. So at least more than, so in one person's space, at least 1.5 other extra people are living. When we put the threshold at 200%, we reach this figure at 85 prisons. When we lower the threshold to 175 to 200, this number crosses 391 prisons. And we have all this information in the report, and it will soon be uploaded on the website. But most of these 250% occupied prisons happen to be in Uttar Pradesh, about 18 of them. These are the names of those jails, and you can take a look. There are Agra, Bahraich, and so on, Pratapgarh. There's too many of them. Delhi, the national capital, also has such jails. Then there is a jail in Bihar, Assam, West Bengal, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Jharkhand. So these are the chronic jails. And what can we do to decongest these jails? As a point, I just want to say that in the last report, Odisha had done quite not so well on prisons. Since then, it added 10% capacity to its jails, which is the most in the country. What 10% means is that it added 2,200 capacity. So 2,200 more inmates can stay now in Odisha's jails, and that has helped it reduce its occupancy quite a lot. This was due to an intervention by the Chief Justice, the then Chief Justice of Odisha. And just fortunately, the IJR data, along with our colleagues from CHRI, they were also they became in a way part of that process. So why do we have a lot of under trials in prisons? It's not like we don't have mechanisms. We have mechanisms. These are the under trial review committees that are supposed to work regularly to identify eligible under trials and recommend them for release. The chart on the left is showing you the performance of the NALSA's UTRC campaign. There you see, say, about 100 prisoners were recommended. Chhattisgarh released the most, and Telangana released the least between April and December 2024. The right-hand chart is showing you the same thing, but since 2019 to 2023. So you have last year's performance of the NALSA special campaign, and then you have a year-wise comparison nationally, and that number is struggling to reach 50%. So this is raising deeper, bigger questions about who we put in jail, what do we charge them with, what is the access to justice they get at different steps, different stages, and then finally, why is the UTRC's recommendation, and perhaps Dr. Raghavan and Gagan and others can weigh in on it later. But the UTRC needs to be strengthened. Linked to this UTRC mechanism, which is under legal aid, comes the serious issue of paralegal volunteers. Can we have a health system without Anganwadi workers, without Ashas? Similarly, can we have a justice system without frontline workers, such as paralegal volunteers and panel lawyers? We won't talk about panel lawyers just now. But you see the numbers from 2019-20, the number of just those who were trained, it has come down from 64 to 53,000. PLVs are falling in numbers. This is a national issue. It's not specific to one state. We have not caught even a single state where this number has actually gone up. If there are issues about PLVs, how they're trained, how they are deployed, those have to be sorted instead of throwing the baby with the bathwater. And the other thing to notice here is that while authorities say that they have trained a certain number, the number actually deployed is typically one third of the number trained. So when you deploy, you have to pay, and you don't have to pay Microsoft salaries. You have to pay something very nominal. And that also the system is not really doing. And therefore, you train fewer and fewer every year, and you also deploy less. Therefore, the people who really need legal aid, the free legal aid the most, are not being provided with that service, with that public good. PLVs, just you can see where they're deployed. They're supposed to be deployed at police stations, at legal service clinics, at juvenile justice boards and CWCs, jails, and so on. So they are actually supposed to be there at every single point of the journey. And as a result, the PLV per lakh population is going down across the country. One of the things related to the overcrowding, and I just want to quickly run through this, is that when we have overcrowded jails, criminals who we are trying to extradite are able to get relief in foreign courts by citing the inhuman conditions of Indian jails, such as this gentleman on the screen. And this is something, okay, we may say we don't want to do it for criminals, but we should do it at least for the criminals that we are trying to extradite. Therefore, we should project and plan for our prison capacity. And the IJR is doing that projection. And it is saying that in 2030, we will have nearly 7 lakh inmates at this current rate. It can change. But at the current rate, we will have 7 lakh inmates, while our capacity, which is the top bar, or the top line graph, will only grow to 5.15 lakh. So this gap, the gap of roughly 1.5 lakhs or something, can only be met if we want to keep the occupancy to 100%, can only be met if we add nationally about 20,000 odd capacity across our 1,300 odd jails. We are not doing that. On average, we add about 5 to 10,000. I'm being very generous with 10,000. As I said, we had Odisha at the most capacity, and that was just 2,200 inmates. So how do we plan to add 22,000 extra capacity year on year to fill this gap till 2030? We can't just dismiss them that they'll probably, the inmates, they've done something, so they are in jail. Why talk about it? And therefore, there will be a cascading effect on prison occupancies, on workloads, and so on. I think those interested can go into the detail. These graphs are present in the report. Coming to the issue of the health of and the mental health of inmates, this is something that really does come up in meetings and conferences, and a lot of noble thoughts are expressed. But on the ground, states about 25 states have still not sanctioned positions for psychologists, for mental health professionals. And there are only 25 psychologists as of now, officially, for our over 5 lakh inmates across the country. And most of these 25 are in 3-4 states. So while we may have those other sessions, life skills, wellness, and so on, the fact is that mental health of prisoners is being completely ignored, and there's nothing really being done about it. Again, I would look for the interaction to our colleagues from Prayas and other colleagues to weigh in on this issue. All of this that we just talked about is grounded, of course, in processes of recruitment, of planning, of implementation, but it is also grounded in the resources that we have allocated, that we continue to allocate for the justice system. Why don't we talk about the justice system the way we talk about the health system, the way we talked about the education system? And we said X percentage of the GDP must be spent on health services. When can we start looking at justice as a service, as a public good, and start looking at it from a public service point of view? As of today, the highest per capita spend among the four pillars is on police. Perhaps no surprises, the workforce is very large, but that is no excuse to give only 6.4 rupees to legal aid. That's what we are spending per capita on legal aid nationally. And the judiciary is also too low. It's less than 200. It's too low per capita spending on our judiciary, while there have been reports and there will be reports that will say that the judiciary is not able to always even utilize the funds it is given. But we can discuss that. But right now, what the disaggregation of per capita allocations and spending on justice system shows that it is too low. Leave aside police, but it is definitely too low for the other three pillars. So just take a moment to absorb this. Punjab spent the highest per capita in both judiciary and police, while Bihar spent the least in both. Haryana and West Bengal are gaining the top and the bottom spots when it comes to legal aid. So the highest state spent per capita on legal aid was rupees 16 in Haryana. In this kind of per capita spend, whether it is police is roughly 1,300 rupees, you can't even secure your house with a decent quality lock. If you are in Bihar and you've had a good meal of a couple of plates of litti chokha, you've probably spent already the per capita spend on judiciary. And we leave the Bengal per capita spend out. I think just 2 rupees, you probably get nothing, not even in Bengal. The national spend per inmate is also very low. People and states are spending much more on the protection of other schemes that are more emotional, that are related to emotional issues. And this is just to think together that when it comes to cash transfers, these various schemes, popular schemes that are announced. So Madhya Pradesh is saying that I'm ready to disburse 22,000 crores for a cash transfer scheme. And we can look at Madhya Pradesh's budgets and add them up. They will probably not come close to this amount. And similarly, in other states, it's not one state. This has become a contagion and it has spread to other states. So what all this has meant is that IGR ranks states on capacity on all these four pillars individually as well as together. Ranking is with you. Most of you have the press release. You will be sent the press release. So I will not spend too much time over there on the ranking. But yes, we can look at it to say that the southern states have swept the top 5 ranks, while the rest of the countries is struggling to get to the top. Among small states, there's not much of a variation since last time. And we can look at it and we can answer your questions on why which state topped, for what reasons, should you have those questions. When you come to the pillar ranking, this is the grid, it's in the report, and you can have a look yourself and we can answer the questions. But before we close, and I'll just take 2-3 minutes, want to talk about something that is very close to our heart, particularly Maya's heart, which is the functioning of the state human rights commissions. This body supposed to protect us in cases of violations by state agents. We did a RTI study. We filed RTIs to 23 SHRCs. Our colleagues worked for 15 months collating, replying, following up, calling them, literally pleading them to give data. And the result of all of this is on the screen. These are just the highlights. So 3 states do not have an investigative wing in their SHRCs. So how are they going to investigate egregious instances of violence? States like Jharkhand, Telangana do not have chairperson or members, so they are headless. The inclusion of women is non-existent at the top level. There are no women chairpersons. In many cases, we find that not so much in this report, but we found that they're acting chairpersons. So in Chhattisgarh, there's an acting person since 2018. There are a lot of vacancies. Very few, less than 5% of the cases are initiated suo motu. I am not going to reflect on the quality of the SHRC work. We are on capacity. So on capacity, the data is showing that their allocation, their fiscal allocation is extremely low, less than 150 crore for all 23. And this is a detailed section in the report. You can have a look at this. This is purely RTI data. This is not from any public authority. In fact, SHRCs themselves do not maintain records in their annual reports and so on. But before I close and come to the recommendations, I want to skip some slides and talk about improvements as well. No, this is just funny. We have improvements. It may seem like there are no improvements, but states are improving. And in fact, there the results are counterintuitive. So you would think that Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and so on are not improving, but everybody is improving. The share of women has increased. It has just not increased at a fast pace. So this slide is showing you that out of about 70 common indicators between the IGR3 and IGR4, Bihar improved the most on 47 indicators, followed by Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Rajasthan. Then you have two southern states. Then Punjab, Uttar Pradesh has improved more than half of the states. And Uttar Pradesh has improved because people have a lot of interest in Uttar Pradesh, India's largest state, the largest police force, largest budgets, and so on. It perhaps needs even more time and more resources to really come up in the ranking on capacity, because it has had to, states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, MP, etc., have had to start from a very low base. And so they are also improving a lot more. And so this improvement slide can be referred to. And if there are any questions on which exact indicators they have improved, we can provide those to you. Finally, what I want to say on behalf of the IJR team, the steering committee, is this: that justice report is about hope. We are not giving up on the system. We have faith in the system, and therefore we are tracking the system's capacity. We are not here to say there's everything only bad. There are improvements that I have shown you, but at the same time, we cannot say there is any magic silver bullet. There is no magic wand. There are a bunch of solutions. Some of them are on the screen, and some of them can be discussed in the interaction. With that, on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank all of you online as well as those in the room for listening to the presentation. Thank you very much. So we can take a moment, and if there are any questions, comments, observations, everything is welcome. Thank you, Orgo, for joining, and Happy New Year again. There's a lunch. While we think about our questions, I want to ask our Maya, Vipul, do you want to?
Everybody can speak for 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Our own benchmark, Indian benchmark is about 197. I mean, sanction strength is around 197, and we have 155. But when you see within this, you start seeing that the lowest is as bad as 81 per lakh. That is in Bihar, and the highest is very good. So we also get another lesson that we can actually, instead of running abroad and seeing the best practices in this country or that country, we can see the best practices within India and say, how has Kerala done a lot of things better than others, or how's Karnataka doing better than many other states, or how Andhra Pradesh is doing. So you, within data, you look at things, and it starts making sense to you. So I mean, and one more thing I'd like to say, that with a team like this, it's like a dream team under the leadership of Maya Daruwala, because she sees the big picture, and she says that you show me where is it going, up or down. If you're going towards Calcutta, and you are found to be near Kanpur, you are going in the right direction. But if you are found near Bhopal, then you're doing completely different direction. She doesn't want to see that. She wants to see, show me the good picture, show me the bad picture, show me what is happening. We are all getting old. There's very little time. We want to leave a better India. So I think that is the message from Maya Daruwala, and of course everybody else.
No, I just wanted to, हिंदी में जनरल साहब ने मुझे पूछा क्यों कर क्यों रहे हो, तो मुझे एक शेर याद, कविता याद आई कि मैं बेपनाह अंधेरों को सुबह कैसे कहूं, मैं इन नजारों का अंधा तमाशबीन नहीं हूं. आई थिंक दैट्स द पॉइंट कि ये अंधेरों के नजारे में हम तालियां ही नहीं बजा सकते. आई थिंक द IGR is a forensic report, and it shows that we spend the least on forensic. But ultimately, I think what Vale said, and I want to underline that, see, it's about, सरकार is about public investment. पैसा कहां डालते हैं, उसके पीछे नीति क्या है, कि जब मैं पैसा डालता हूं तो क्या वो पैसा जो सबसे ज्यादा वल्नरेबिलिटी है उसको एड्रेस करता है, या जो अच्छी बातें हैं, मैं आलीशान मकान बनाऊं बट मैं कटिंग एज पैरालीगल वॉलंटियर में नहीं डालूं पैसा, और डालूं तो मैं उनकी तालीम में कितना डालूं। मैं 3 साल वाले लॉयर्स को 5 साल की तालीम देता हूं, प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटीज में 10, 12, 15 लाख रुपया खरीदते हैं, बट मैं एक पैरालीगल वॉलंटियर जो सबसे ज्यादा वल्नरेबिलिटी को एड्रेस करता है, मैं उसको 2 दिन की ट्रेनिंग 2-2 घंटे की देता हूं। तो मेरी नीति के ऊपर नियत का सवाल आ जाता है कि मुझे क्या जस्टिस चाहिए। मैं पुलिस के ऊपर सबसे ज्यादा खरीदता हूं, वेरी गुड, तालियां, बट क्यों खरीदता हूं और किसके लिए खरीदता हूं? ज्यादा बंदूकें लाने के लिए खरीदता हूं? आई थिंक ये सब सवाल एक हिडन एजेंडा में अगर आप रिपोर्ट पढ़े तो आपको आ जाएगा। बहनों को, औरतों को क्यों नहीं ले रहे हम? क्योंकि मर्दानगी है पूरे जस्टिस सिस्टम में। आई थिंक ये सवाल हम खड़े कर रहे हैं, इसलिए ये फॉरेंसिक रिपोर्ट है। एंड द आइडिया इज कि अगर एज जर्नलिस्ट यू लुक एट द रिपोर्ट एंड हाईलाइट द क्रिटिकल एरियाज, वहां इंप्रूवमेंट चाहिए, आई थिंक दैट वुड हेल्प। और ये एक जस्टिस रिपोर्ट 1 साल 2 साल नहीं, ये 5 साल 7 साल के बाद एक पब्लिक डॉक्यूमेंट बनता है जिसके ऊपर पब्लिक पॉलिसी आधार रखती है। तो हम इसकी आधारशिला बने, एक जस्टिस रिपोर्ट पब्लिक पॉलिसी ऑन जस्टिस की आधारशिला बने, ये हमारी कोशिश है। इतना ही बोलूंगा।
See, the big picture is समाज में क्राइम बढ़ रहा है और सीरियस क्राइम्स बढ़ रहे हैं, और when that is happening, the public narrative is all about increasing punishment. Whether it is our parliamentarians or legislative assemblies, every time a heinous crime comes up in the public arena through the press, then all we do is change our laws, make capital punishment, and put them behind bars for life. But we find that the incidents are going on happening. So there is a public perception कि अगर harsher laws होंगे तो crimes कम हो जाएंगे, but वो नहीं हो रहा है। तो एक समय आता है जब उसके बारे में सोचने की जरूरत है कि laws तो आप change करते जा रहे हो, आप harsher laws ला रहे हो, लेकिन उससे क्राइम रेट कम नहीं हो रहा है, हार्शर क्राइम्स कम नहीं हो रहा है। और इंडिया जस्टिस रिपोर्ट इज एन अटेम्प्ट टू स्पीक टू द पीपल, टू से कि कैपेसिटी को जब तक आप स्ट्रेंथन नहीं करोगे, ये प्रॉब्लम्स सॉल्व और पार्शियली भी एड्रेस नहीं होने वाले। अगर आप देखोगे कि 30 to 40% वैकेंसीज हैं अक्रॉस द जस्टिस पिलर्स, जुडिशरी बोलिए, आप प्रिजन्स बोलिए, पुलिस बोलिए, बिटवीन 30 to 40% वैकेंसीज है। तो ऑलरेडी ओवरक्राउडेड जेल्स में अगर 30% वैकेंसी है, तो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस आर यू गोइंग टू एक्सपेक्ट? वो जो जेलर है प्रिजन में, वो 14 घंटा काम करता है, उसको छुट्टी नहीं मिलती है, सो ही इज लाइकली टू टेक आउट हिज फ्रस्ट्रेशन ऑन समवन और द अदर, एंड इट्स गोइंग टू बी द most vulnerable person in that situation. दूसरा मैं ये कहूंगा कि इंडिया जस्टिस रिपोर्ट का ऑब्जेक्टिव है एक पब्लिक डिबेट छेड़ना, और ये रैंकिंग का जो ऑब्जेक्टिव था वो भी सिर्फ पब्लिक डिबेट छोड़ने के लिए। अब आप देखोगे कि southern states are doing better than northern states. So is that a question that we should be talking about? Why are the southern states doing better than the northern states? Is it the fact that governance by and large is better in the southern states than in the northern states? So these are the kind of questions जो हम इंडिया जस्टिस रिपोर्ट के पब्लिकेशन से एक डिबेट छेड़ना चाहते हैं, एंड एट सम पॉइंट द इंडिया जस्टिस रिपोर्ट शुड बी as popular as the Acer report on education. And that is why we are working towards, reaching that point. Thank you.
So just building on everything the other panelists have also said, I work with Daksh, which works on the judiciary. So as media persons, I'd urge you to treat the data that's been presented in IJR as a starting point and dig a little further, because a lot of the reporting on the justice system is quite superficial. So if we talk about courts, which I am most familiar with, everybody talks about, okay, say 5 crore cases are pending now in India's courts across various levels. But what does that actually mean? How long are these cases pending? What is actually counted as a case even, differs from state to state. These are things that need to be highlighted. In some states, interlocutory applications are counted as a separate case. So obviously then we are overestimating the number of pending cases. When is a case actually pending? As the problem also is that as soon as a case is filed, now we treat it as pending. It's not an alarming situation as soon as it's filed. How many cases are actually what we call ripe for trial, ready for trial? How long are cases stuck in administrative stages, notice, service, summons? And connected to that, the shortage of staff. I mean, so much attention is paid to shortage of judges, but what about shortage of staff? It is staff who are actually running the courts. And if you see across states, there is a shortage at high court and subordinate court level when it comes to staff. So I'd like all of you to dig in a little deeper into this. When we talk about, say, forensics, again, now there's a lot of attention on this. Criminal cases are really getting delayed because there are delays at the forensic analysis level. From what I've heard, what's happening is that the police are routinely sending like cell phones for forensic analysis, even in cases where it's not needed. So maybe look at how do you train police better to make that judgment. Is forensic analysis needed in this case? Does every criminal case need forensic analysis? So this is a good starting point. This is giving you a big picture, but please dig little deeper. You'll get really interesting stories on where the problems actually lie and where the solutions can be found.
मैं उस बात से अपनी बात को शुरू करना चाहता हूं जो वलय जी ने अपने प्रस्तुतिकरण में बोला। कल ही मैं बैंगलोर से आया वापस। बैंगलोर का रहने वाला हूं, दिल्ली में काम करता हूं, बैंगलोर में ही काम करता हूं, इसलिए की छुट्टी है। आजकल जो हमें वहां पर सरकार की तरफ से बहुत ज्यादा जो सुनने को मिल रहा है और विपक्ष की तरफ से जो कंप्लेंट्स आते रही है वही है कि इतना पैसा सरकार ने जो गारंटी स्कीम्स पे खर्च कर दिए तो बाकी विकास के काम के लिए पैसे है नहीं सरकार के पास। कर्नाटक में बहुत बड़ी समस्या है, यहां तक कि आशा वर्कर्स जिनका जिक्र वलय जी ने किया धरने पे हैं, तनख्वाह बढ़ाइए। तनख्वाह बढ़ाते हैं तो मुश्किल से 100-200 रुपए बढ़ता है। और जो आंगनवाड़ी कार्यकर्ताएं हैं, सारी महिलाएं हैं, वो भी स्ट्राइक पे हैं। फ्रीडम पार्क करके है बैंगलोर के बीचों बीच, एक जमाने में वो सेंट्रल जेल हुआ करता था। लिया बैंगलोर से है, वो जानती हैं। वहां पर वो भी अब धरना लगाए बैठे हैं कि हमारी तनख्वाह बढ़ाओ। तो वाकई क्या पैसे है नहीं और गारंटी स्कीम्स पे खर्च करके पैसे सारे खत्म हो गए कि विकास के लिए कुछ बचा नहीं, पुलिस में भर्ती करने के लिए बचा नहीं, क्योंकि पुलिस में अगर भर्ती करो तो एक बार का खर्चा नहीं होता है ना। 30 साल का उसका जो करियर है पुलिसकर्मी का, वो पूरा खर्चा सरकार को भरना पड़ेगा। तो मैं केवल 2 बातों को आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं। एक बहुचर्चित है और दूसरा मैं चाहता था कि वो चर्चा में आए लेकिन आया नहीं। बहुचर्चित विषय सबसे पहले, जो बड़े बड़े पूंजीपति और उद्यमी लोग जो कर्जे लेते हैं बैंकों से और फिर लौटाते नहीं है, आज की तारीख में खुद केंद्र सरकार का कहना है कि 14.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा है। अगर मान लो इसका आधा हिस्सा भी अगर सरकार वापस वसूलने की क्षमता और प्रयास करती है तो जिन बातों को वलय जी ने अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में आपके सामने रखा, बहुत सारी जो कमियां हैं उनको सुधारा जा सकता है। लेकिन कहते हैं नहीं ये तो बहुत कंप्लेंट मतलब काफी लंबा सिलसिला है, इतना पैसा वापस आएगा नहीं। तो ठीक है, दूसरा जो कम चर्चित विषय है, आज की तारीख में सरकार के द्वारा नियुक्त किए गए महालेखपाल, कंट्रोलर एंड ऑडिटर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया, उनका कहना है कि जो टैक्स बकाया है हमारे देश में कई सालों से 19.5 लाख करोड़ है। टैक्स, ऋण तो छोड़ दीजिए, सरकार को जो पैसा मिलना चाहिए इनकम टैक्स और कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स के माध्यम से, उसका बकाया 19.5 लाख करोड़। ठीक है, आप कहते हैं 19.5 लाख करोड़, अरे 16.5 तो 14.5 तो हम नहीं ले पाए, 19 कहां से लेंगे? ये 19.5 लाख करोड़ में से 3 लाख करोड़ से ज्यादा ऐसा कर्जा है और ऐसा बकाया है जिसके ऊपर कोई भी डाउट नहीं है, टैक्स पेयर के तरफ से कोई उसके ऊपर आपत्ति नहीं जताई गई। बकाया क्यों है? क्योंकि इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट ने उसको वसूलने की प्रयास नहीं किया। कौन कह रहा है? हम में से कोई नहीं कह रहे, सरकार के द्वारा नियुक्त महालेखपाल कह रहे हैं अपने रिपोर्ट में। और आप यकीन मानिएगा, मैं इस बात को क्यों उठा रहा हूं, वो दूसरे एक बात से उठा रहा हूं, उसको जोड़ना चाहता हूं कि उस सीएजी के रिपोर्ट के ऊपर आज तक, पिछले साल आया वो रिपोर्ट, आज तक हमारे पब्लिक अकाउंट्स कमेटी में चर्चा नहीं हुई है। ऋण वापस लेना तो बात की बात है, सरकार को आधिकारिक रूप से जो पैसे मिलने चाहिए टैक्स पेयर की तरफ से, उसको बिना कोई डिस्प्यूट के जो 3.5 लाख करोड़ है उसको लेने में परेशानी हो रही है। तो ये वाले रिपोर्ट्स कहां चर्चा करेंगे? पैसे हैं, लेकिन जिसको कहते हैं ना इच्छा शक्ति, एक तो जुटाकर पैसों को लाकर फिर उसको खर्चा करना इन बातों पर, वो इच्छा शक्ति नहीं है। इच्छा शक्ति केवल हमारे 5 साल में एक बार होने वाले चुनावों को जीतने के बारे में है बस। और अनफॉर्चुनेटली जब तक आप लोग साथ नहीं देंगे, उन चुनावों में इस प्रकार के रिपोर्ट के जो मुख्य निष्कर्ष जो हैं वो मुद्दे नहीं बनेंगे। क्योंकि लोगों तक इस रिपोर्ट का इतना, मैं वो सारे ग्राफ्स देख रहा था जो वजह जी प्रेजेंट कर रहे थे, मैं सोच रहा था कि एक तो इसके ऊपर कितना काम हुआ है और इसको लोगों तक पहुंचाने के लिए सरल रूप से और कितना काम करना पड़ेगा। तो इसलिए मेरी आप सबसे गुजारिश ये है कि इस रिपोर्ट के जो रिकमेंडेशंस हैं, इसके फाइंडिंग्स जो हैं, इसको कृपया गंभीरता से लें और ज्यादा से ज्यादा इसके बारे में लिखें, ताकि ये हमारे जो नेता हैं, जो जनप्रतिनिधि हैं, उनकी नजर में ये पड़े और जो विपक्ष के जो जनप्रतिनिधि हैं इन बातों को वो सदन में उठाएं, ना कि केवल पॉलिटिकल बातों को वहां पर लेकर फिर सभा से वॉकआउट या फिर अब्सटेन, जो भी रोजमर्रा का जो तमाशा चलता रहता है उससे हटकर ये जो मुद्दा है इसके ऊपर सीरियसली फोकस करें। मैं क्यों कह रहा हूं, अंतिम बात, आप पूरे देख रहे हैं, पूरे देश में, पूरी दुनिया में, संसार में कितना उथल पुथल हो रहा है। आर्थिक नीतियों की वजह से जो उथल पुथल हो रहा है, बहुत ही जल्द क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम पर भी ये असर करने वाला है। क्यों? कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बढ़ने वाला है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट तो बढ़ेगा ही। इज अवर सिस्टम प्रिपेयर्ड टू डील विद दैट? कहते हैं कि हमारे देश में एक जमाने में 5 ईयर प्लानिंग था और उस वक्त तो कह रहे थे कि हमारे जो कॉम्पिटिटिव नेशन जो है वो 50 साल तक प्लान करता है। हम आज की तारीख में कम से कम 5 साल के लिए तो प्लान कर ले इन मुद्दों पर, तो बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाएगी। धन्यवाद।
Final word to Maya. You guys are not asking questions. We can go on.
आपको कुछ पूछना नहीं है किसी को भी? सर, it's okay. This is General Nilendra Kumar, who runs a series of podcasts on very many topics. Sir.
सबसे पहले तो मैं आप सबको बहुत इंडिया जस्टिस रिपोर्ट से जो भी संबंधित हैं आप सबको बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। बहुत आपने तारीफ काबिल काम किया है। कुछ मेरे ऑब्जर्वेशन हैं, कमेंट्स हैं और हो सकता है उसमें आपको मेरी नासमझी लगे, तो डू ओवरलुक दैट, बट नेवरदलेस आई वांट टू फ्लैग सर्टेन इश्यूज। पहली चीज ये जो कहा मुझे सुनने में आया कई मरतबे आरटीआई, तो उससे मेरा ये ऑब्जर्वेशन है कि ये जो रिपोर्ट आप बना रहे हैं और इस पर 4th एडिशन लिखा है, तो इसमें जो कंसर्न्ड एजेंसीज हैं, जैसे कि मैं समझता हूँ बीपीआरएनडी हुआ या सुप्रीम कोर्ट हुआ, यहाँ हम जस्टिस की बात कर रहे हैं, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस, एमएचए, फाइनेंस कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया, the departmental committees of the parliament and also at the state legislature, NHRC, National Commission for Women, the National Legal Services Authorities. तो मैं ये मान लेता हूं कि उन सबको भी आपकी ये रिपोर्ट जा रही है, और न केवल कि आप उनको सिर्फ फॉरवर्ड कर दें, उनके साथ अगर आप डायलॉग करें इसके ऊपर, तो उसकी भी मेरी दृष्टि में जरूरत है। ये ठीक है, शाम को जस्टिस लोकुर साहब आएंगे और वो भाषण देंगे, उन्होंने बहुत सारे डिसीजन भी लिए जब वो जज थे, लेकिन इसको फॉर्मली उनके साथ बात करनी चाहिए जो आपने ये इतना मेहनत का काम किया है। ये पॉइंट उधर से ऑलरेडी आ गया कि जितना कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग के लिए फंड्स की जरूरत है, शायद उसका कुछ कोरिलेशन आपको निकालना चाहिए कि जितने हमारे पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स हैं और इनके जो नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स हैं वो कितने हैं, और यहाँ पर हम कितनी पैसे की बात कर रहे हैं। ये पॉइंट आया था अभी कि हेल्थ या एजुकेशन इज ऑल्सो अ सर्विस, तो उससे मैं ये सोचने के लिए बाध्य हुआ कि ये जो हमारा एक्ट है, अल्टीमेटली इट इज द आई सपोज द इनकम टैक्स एक्ट, जिसमें कि कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी का आया। Why can't the state, why can't the model or the central or the district prisons be equated with a service? They are performing a service, and therefore जो corporate sector CSR में लगाता है, अगर वो किसी स्कूल में लगा सकता है या और बहुत सारी चीजों में, तो इसमें भी लगाए। ये इशू भी डिबेट करने का हो सकता है। तो ये जो हमारे नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स हैं, जो लोन्स राइट ऑफ किए जा रहे हैं, या जैसा कि अभी आपने कहा कि टैक्स अनरियलाइज्ड है, तो उन सब के साथ भी ये कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग के लिए जो रिसोर्सेज की जरूरत है, उसका कुछ कोरिलेशन होना चाहिए। चूंकि मैं फौज में रहा और वहां पर भी मैं जज एडवोकेट जनरल में था, तो ये मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आया कि अगर हम क्राइम्स की बात कर रहे हैं, तो जितना मिलिट्री का ताल्लुक है, इट इज नॉट मियरली दिस समरी कोर्ट मार्शल, डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट मार्शल, जनरल कोर्ट मार्शल, जो आर्म्ड फोर्सेस स्पेशल पावर एक्ट हैं, फॉर सम रीजन यू हैव जस्ट लेफ्ट आउट ऑफ योर परव्यू दोज स्टेट्स which are having the armed forces special power act. And there are very many cases, whether of domestic violence, whether under Official Secret Act, whether Prevention of Corruption Act, within the service domain. Why shouldn't there be an oversight over that? उन सब से भी a huge, substantial portion of our population is affected by those cases, whether it is the serving people, whether it is the ex-servicemen, whether they are their family members, and therefore this valuable expertise that is being put into action should also be extended to that domain, maybe from the 5th edition or whenever you choose to do so. Well, these are my observations, and I would further like to once again commend the remarkable work that has been done by you all. Thank you.
Thank you, General Saab. I can't remember all your points, but if you remind me, I will talk about them. What I wanted to say was that this is the 4th report. Yeah. As we go on, we expand. We are looking to answer your question and something that Venkat touched on, we are going to bring out by July, August, something called Budgets for Justice. Okay? That will look at a deep dive on where the money is spent, how much it is spent, what is the utilization, how does it correlate to the GDP of that state, etc. And that will again channel a debate on how much money really is spent on this essential service. I keep on saying that the India Justice Report came about because we wanted to persuade and point out both to policymakers and also to the public and particularly to the media that just like you have Anganwadi workers, just like you would not now say that any village should have no primary health care center, why are we not treating something as essential, such a pillar of democracy like justice, access to justice for everyone? Why are we not treating it on par? No developing country has got money for everything. But yes, priorities are shown by what you spend money on. And one of them is definitely not justice at the moment. And within the justice sector, certainly upskilling, training is not there. And yet you are asking the police and the judges and the legal aid, you're asking them to uphold the pillar of democracy in a rule of law country without upskilling the people who work there and keeping them short. So these are the kinds of questions. Do I talk to the National Human Rights Commission? Do I talk to the MHA? Do I talk to the DOJ? Do I go to the states and talk to the bureaucrats there? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And they point out that it is an extremely slow and complex and interconnected machinery. If you talk to the AG of a state, he will point out to the finance. If you talk to the finance, he will talk about the legislature. And the more knowledge we have and the more knowledge we can put into the public, the system is not fixing itself. The things that we are pointing out over 5 years have been there for 10 years, have been there for 70 years, and are accumulating in dysfunction. So the idea is that we, the people, should also be armed with the knowledge to make the noise that asks and demands justice. As I said, no politician in his right mind can say, I will not give you a school. But why won't you give me a court close by? Why won't you create mediation centers? Why won't you have a counseling center in a village for me? That is the kind of debate that we must have. Now, I am told by my colleague that there is lunch and there is outside. So if nobody has any burning question, Madam has a burning question. Please.
Sorry, sir, can you pass the mic?
No, there's a recording.
recorded,
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tanishka Sodhi from the Quint. Thank you so much for such an essential and extensive report that you guys have put out. I wanted to understand the previous editions of the IJR report. How have different state governments and departments of the criminal justice system engaged with it? Have they taken in the findings and recommendations to try and better their own record, or has there been no engagement from their side on this?
I answer that in a very tentative way. There's definitely engagement. Whether the engagement is articulated as come and see me and talk to me because I'm worried about this, it's not there. But in Karnataka, for instance, the last but one, it's about 3-4 years ago, the chief secretary called all the senior bureaucrats and heads of department and said, look, this is what is being said about us. And that was at a time when Karnataka was not at the top of its game. In the last two reports, it is. Is it due to us? I can't say. But it is somebody is paying attention. In Orissa, we held a 2-day meeting with the National Law School there. The Chief Justice, who was listening to a public interest litigation on prisons, listened to all the statistics and then asked that our statistics should be joined to the amicus. And from there was a definite and a demonstrable change in the way the prisons worked. Staff were increased, accommodation was increased, funding to the prisons was increased. And so you do have these episodal things. And the states that are doing better, they do engage more. The states that are not doing as well, they have their problems. They know their problems. And I am sure that they take account of what is happening and want to do better. That was that last slide about the improvements. And it's simply that the public at large is not as engaged with the delivery of justice, because 9/10 of people don't actually have to engage with the court or engage with the police or engage with the prison. So it's difficult. Whereas everybody wants a child to be educated or everybody wants healthcare. So from that point of view, we come in with a disadvantage. But that is exactly the disadvantage that we as a group are trying to overcome. And better than all this is lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, one second. We can go off live. We'll just take a photo, Moin. Can you?
This is a study on recruitment, because we thought that that was one of the most bunyadi things.
Okay, Maya, just pose. Pose for the photo.
Hold it. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now lunch.